I walked into the therapy office for my first session, already anxious about opening up to a stranger about my recent breakup and career crisis. The receptionist led me down a hallway to a door marked Dr. Olivia Santos, licensed clinical psychologist. I knocked, heard a familiar voice say, "Come in," and when I opened the door, my entire world tilted. Sitting behind the desk, looking just as shocked as I felt, was Olivia, my ex-girlfriend from college. The woman I dated for 3 years before we went our separate ways almost a decade ago. The person who knew every single one of my deepest insecurities, my family trauma, my worst fears. She knew things about me I'd never told anyone else. And now she was supposed to be my therapist. Before we dive into the most awkward situation I've ever experienced, drop a comment telling me what city you're watching from, and please subscribe to help the channel grow. This story gets so complicated. My name is Harper Wade, I'm 32 years old, and I'd been putting off therapy for years despite knowing I needed it. I'd finally hit a breaking point after losing my job as an investigative journalist when my publication folded, going through a brutal breakup with my girlfriend of 2 years, and generally feeling like my life was spiraling out of control. My best friend Maya had practically begged me to find a therapist, and after weeks of resistance, I'd finally agreed to try. I'd found Dr. Santos through my insurance network. The profile photo on the website had been a professional headshot that didn't look like anyone I recognized. The bio said she specialized in LGBTQ+ issues, relationship trauma, and career transitions, which felt perfect for what I was dealing with. I'd booked the appointment online without even speaking to anyone, just desperate to get help. Now I was standing in her office doorway staring at Olivia Santos, who I'd last seen at our college graduation almost 10 years ago. She looked different, more polished, with her dark curly hair shorter and styled professionally, wearing a blazer instead of the vintage band t-shirts she'd lived in during college. But her eyes were the same warm brown that I'd once known better than my own, and her expression was a mixture of shock and something else I couldn't quite read. "Harper," she said, standing up quickly. I didn't realize you were my 3 o'clock. You're Dr. Santos," I said stupidly. "You became a therapist. I got my PhD 5 years ago. I've been practicing in Seattle for 3 years." She seemed to be struggling with what to say next. "Harper, this is obviously a conflict of interest. I can't be your therapist." "We need to." "It's fine," I interrupted, even though it absolutely wasn't fine. "I'll just go." "I'm sorry. I should have recognized your name. But Santos is common and I just didn't think." "Wait." She moved around the desk. "Don't just leave. You're here because you need help, and I know how hard it was for you to even make an appointment. Let me at least refer you to someone excellent. Please, sit down for just a few minutes." I sat in the chair across from her desk, feeling surreal about the entire situation. Olivia sat back down, pulling out a notepad, and for a moment we just looked at each other, years of history sitting heavy in the air between us. "How have you been?" she asked, then immediately shook her head. "Sorry, that's not appropriate right now. Let me approach this professionally. Harper, I obviously can't treat you given our history, but I want to make sure you get connected with someone who can help. Can you tell me generally what brought you to seek therapy so I can make an appropriate referral? Do you really not know?" I asked. "You always knew everything about me before I even knew it myself." She smiled slightly, sadly. "That was a long time ago. We're different people now." "Are we?" I asked. "Because I feel exactly like I did at 22 right now. Lost, scared, like everything's falling apart and I don't know how to fix it." Olivia was quiet for a moment. "I'm going to do something that's probably against protocol, but I think it's necessary. I'm going to refer you to my colleague Dr. Martinez, who's excellent and has immediate availability. But I'm also going to tell you, as someone who once cared about you deeply, that whatever you're going through, you're capable of handling it." The Harper I knew was one of the strongest people I'd ever met, even when she didn't believe it herself. Tears surprised me, appearing without warning. The Harper you knew had her whole life ahead of her. This Harper is 32, unemployed, recently single, and apparently booking therapy appointments with her ex-girlfriend. "Harper," she leaned forward, And for a moment the professional distance dropped away entirely. What happened? Are you okay? And suddenly I was telling her everything. About losing my job, about my girlfriend Rachel leaving me for someone else. About feeling like every choice I'd made in the past decade had been wrong. About feeling like I'd peaked in college and had been declining ever since. It all came pouring out, and Olivia listened the way she always had, with complete attention and without judgment. When I finally stopped talking, she was quiet for a long moment. "I can't be your therapist," she said finally. "But I can tell you that you're experiencing a major life transition, and what you're feeling is completely normal. You need professional support to work through this. Dr. Martinez specializes in exactly these issues, and I'm going to call her right now to see if she can see you this week." She made the call, setting up an appointment for me in 2 days. When she hung up, she wrote something on a card and handed it to me. "That's Dr. Martinez's information. She's expecting you Thursday at 4 p.m. "Thank you," I said, standing up to leave. "Harper, wait." She stood too. "Can I ask you something? Off the record, just as someone who once knew you?" "Okay. Are you taking care of yourself? Eating, sleeping, not isolating too much?" "Mostly. Maya checks on me constantly." "Good. I'm glad you still have her." She hesitated, then added, "And Harper? For what it's worth, I never thought you peaked in college. I always knew you were going to do incredible things. I'm sorry you're going through this rough patch, but this isn't your decline. It's just a difficult chapter." I left her office feeling strange, exposed, and vulnerable, but also oddly lighter. Over the next few weeks, I started seeing Dr. Martinez, who was indeed excellent. Therapy was hard and uncomfortable, but it was helping. I started processing my job loss, my breakup, my patterns of self-sabotage. About a month after the disastrous first appointment, I got an email from an unfamiliar address. "Harper, I hope it's okay that I'm reaching out. I got your email from the contact form you filled out when booking your appointment, and I wanted to check that you connected with Dr. Martinez and that therapy is helping. I've been thinking about you and hoping you're doing better. If it's not appropriate for me to contact you, I understand and won't reach out again. But if you ever want to talk, as old friends rather than therapist and client, my number is below. Olivia." I stared at the email for 3 days before responding. When I finally did, I kept it brief. "Therapy with Dr. Martinez is helping. Thank you for the referral. And yes, talking as old friends would be nice. We started carefully. Coffee once, then dinner a few weeks later. At first, we kept things surface level, catching up on our lives since college. Olivia had moved to Seattle after getting her PhD in Boston, had been in a long-term relationship that ended 2 years ago, loved her work but found it emotionally exhausting. I told her about my journalism career, the stories I'd broken, the publication I'd loved working for until it suddenly didn't exist anymore. But gradually, the conversations deepened. We fell back into the easy intimacy we'd once had, the ability to talk about real things without pretense or performance. And I started realizing that the reason my relationship with Rachel had failed was because I'd been comparing every relationship for the past decade to what Olivia and I had shared. No one else had ever really measured up. About 3 months after our initial appointment, we were having dinner at her place when she said something that changed everything. "I need to tell you something, and it's going to sound completely unprofessional and possibly unethical." "Okay." When you walked into my office that day, my first thought wasn't, "This is a conflict of interest." It was, "She's even more beautiful than I remembered." And every time we've met since then, I've been trying to convince myself that we're just old friends reconnecting. But Harper, I don't think about my old friends the way I think about you. My heart was pounding. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying that I technically violated about 15 professional ethics codes by reaching out to you after referring you to another therapist. I'm saying that I've spent the past decade thinking about you, wondering what would have happened if we'd tried harder to make long-distance work after graduation instead of just accepting that we were going different places. I'm saying that having you back in my life, even just as a friend, has made me realize how much I never really moved on. Olivia, you were my therapist for approximately 10 minutes 3 months ago. I don't think that counts as an ethical violation. it absolutely counts. There are strict rules about dual relationships. I'm not supposed to have personal relationships with people who sought me out as a therapist, even if I immediately referred them elsewhere. So, what do? I asked. The ethical thing would be to maintain our friendship and nothing more. To respect the professional boundaries that exist because of that initial appointment. And the unethical thing? She looked at me with an expression that was both vulnerable and determined. The unethical thing would be to acknowledge that we're both adults who can make our own choices about relationships. That our history predates any therapeutic relationship by years. That maybe sometimes the rules are less important than what's real. I moved closer to her on the couch. You still have all my secrets. You know everything about me. All my worst qualities and biggest failures. You knew me when I was a mess in college, and you watched me be a mess in your office 3 months ago. And you're still one of the most remarkable people I know, she said quietly. Your secrets don't scare me, Harper. They never did. I'm not fully healed yet. I'm still in therapy, still figuring out my career, still kind of a disaster. I'm not asking you to be healed. I'm asking if you'd be willing to try this again, knowing everything we know now, accepting all the complications. I kissed her instead of answering, and it felt like coming home and starting something new all at the same time. That was 7 months ago. Olivia and I have been together officially for most of that time, and yes, it's complicated. She consulted with an ethics board to make sure our relationship didn't violate any regulations given the unusual circumstances. I continued therapy with Dr. Martinez specifically to process the relationship and make sure I was making healthy choices rather than just repeating old patterns. We've been careful and thoughtful about every step. My new therapist is my ex, and she still has all my secrets. But now those secrets aren't liabilities, they're the foundation of understanding. That makes our relationship deeper than anything I've experienced with anyone else. She knows my worst qualities and loves me anyway. She saw me at my lowest and chose to reach out. And somehow, booking that accidental therapy appointment with the woman who once knew me better than anyone became the catalyst for finding my way back to myself and back to her. Sometimes the most awkward coincidences are actually the universe giving you exactly what you need, even if it takes a decade and an extremely uncomfortable first therapy session to get there. And sometimes the person who has all your secrets is exactly the person who can help you write your next chapter.